FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is May 20th, 2020. That's 5/20/2020. And maybe that means something. Maybe it has significant numerological properties. I don't know. But look, when you look at the markets, you look at the government, the deficit, all these things, the banks, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, you know something is amiss. And we're going to tell you what it is. And I'd like to know your opinion. What do you think is happening here? Why don't you email us, kl@kerrylutz.com with your opinion, kl@kerrylutz.com. Actually, if you listen to this show regularly, you have a very good idea of what's going on. But we've got Stuart Englert with us now. Stuart, your latest book, Rigged, Exposing the Largest Financial Fraud in History. And American history, probably, and modern history, and maybe going back 5,000 years. So it's good to have you on. Where are we, and how did we get here?
Well, I'm a libertarian. I was a Ross Perot supporter. He always talked about the debt, and he raised my attention to how could we create all this currency without some negative ramifications. Then I was following Ron Paul when he ran on the libertarian ticket back in 1988, and he talked about debt and deficits. And I just became more and more curious, and I started reading a lot about monetary history and monetary theory and the national debt. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, I stumbled upon an organization by the name of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, or Madoff. Are you familiar with that organization?
Oh, yeah, I know Bill Murphy very well. And was it Chris Powell? Yeah.
Powell. Yes.
Yeah, both of them.
Powell is the secretary treasurer of the organization. Well, anyway, I started following GATA, 10 to 12 years ago on their website, and they've been trying to expose the fraud, for over 20 years. That organization was formed in 1999, and they've accumulated a lot of documentary evidence that proves that the monetary metals are manipulated and the gold and silver prices are suppressed. And I went to Chris Powell, the Secretary Treasurer, about a year and a half ago, because I've been publishing books. And I said, Chris, would you like to publish a book on this, or write a book on this subject, and I'll publish it on your behalf? And he told me at that time that he didn't have the time. Well, last fall, I had some time, and I spent 3 to 4 months delving into GATA's archives, poring over the documentation, the records, the transcripts, and pulling out what I thought were the most pertinent examples and evidence that the markets are rigged. And that's how I ended up writing the book. And one of my motivations was I'm a journalist by training. I was in the media as a writer, editor, reporter for 30 years, working on daily newspapers and national magazines. And I knew that Chris had taken a lot of these documents to major media, the Financial Times, Associated Press, Reuters, the Wall Street Journal, and other major publications. And he was getting no traction. They were refusing to report on the subject. So I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to write this book. And so that's what I did.
All right. So obviously, these markets have been manipulated for many, many years. Do you think, and we'll talk about the nature of the manipulation, but for right now, do you think that the powers that be are getting to the end of the road where they're not going to be able to manipulate precious metals any longer?
Well, I agree with you that something is amiss in the markets. Okay, when you have the spot price of silver and gold, different from the futures price, and different from the retail price. There's a huge disconnect or divergence in these prices, and that tells you that something is wrong. And I don't know when this thing's going to fall apart. The monetary magicians have kept the wheels on this cart much longer than I thought they could. I estimated that this scheme couldn't go on much beyond 2012. And here we are in 2020. They keep trying to paper over it, but at some point they're going to run out of metal. People are going to lose confidence in the dollar, and all it would take is a couple billionaires to wipe out the supply of gold and silver, and the scheme would come to an end.
Yeah, well, I had on recently Ted Butler, another guy, and what he said is that all the commercials, except for J.P. Morgan Chase, are short gold and short silver. Up until the past couple of days, the silver was marginally profitable. The gold, they're in for a big loss. But J.P. Morgan's got record hoards of each, so they've quietly dropped out of the club. They still go through the motions, but they're long on gold and silver, and J.P. Morgan is usually always right.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Orin Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Orin is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits, and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Orin's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Orin's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Orin trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orinresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Sure. Ted Butler's a great researcher. I actually quote him in the book. He claims silver is the most manipulated commodity in the world. And I tend to agree with that. When you see the price of silver, it's, at or below the cost of production right now. And that tells you that the markets aren't free and they're being manipulated.
Yeah. And we're also seeing that the actual price of gold and silver is far higher than on the COMEX. If you go to buy physical, the premiums on silver, you're in the mid-20s, and silver just bounced up over $17 the ounce. That's a huge premium. It's almost 50, 60%. And gold, close to $2,000. So that doesn't seem exactly right that the premiums have skyrocketed at the same time. Well, they've been going up on the COMEX, but they haven't gone up exponentially at this point.
And this isn't the first time we've seen this. One of the things that intrigued me and interested me in this subject was back in, I think it was 2010 and 2011, when I saw the spot price falling, but the retail price of gold and silver was increasing, particularly silver, and the premiums were going up. But at that time, they were nowhere near where they are now. The divergence is much wider at this time, the gap between the retail and the spot price.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we know, this has never been like this before that I know of. And I've been following gold since the 80s, basically. And, it's just rather shocking that we could be at this point. And yet most of you out there, most Americans, and really most people in the world don't have a clue. Even in China, they really don't know. I was in China 3 years ago. I'm talking with a guy who was trying to do a little business with not metals related. And he believed at that point that the best place to put your money was in real estate. I mean, he really... But he wasn't in the top tier cities in Shanghai or Beijing or one of those. He was in a smaller province, probably only had 50 or 80 million population, but he didn't know it. So I believe that if the Chinese didn't know, then nobody knows except for a very small group of people.
Sure.
So the question is, when does this thing really take off, and when do we find out the emperor has no clothes?
I'm not a prognosticator. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. Everything is telling me that we're getting closer. Ronan Manley, are you familiar with his research?
Afraid I'm not.
Well, he's a great researcher. I'm not a chartist or market researcher. I'm more of a writer and monetary historian. But it just, all the research that he's done tells me that we're getting closer to the point where these bullion banks and the central banks aren't going to be able to manipulate the price much longer.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I just see that a trend in motion stays in motion until it becomes unsustainable. I think we are getting to the point with precious metals where the trend is certainly becoming unsustainable.
Well, it really has to do with the dollar. The reason that the U.S. government, the central banks, the bullion banks, the International Monetary Fund, and the what is it called? The Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. It's called the Central Bank of Central Banks. The reason that they've tried to suppress or manipulate the metal markets is because they're trying to defend the U.S. dollar and its role as the world's reserve currency. And, the dollar has had a great run as the world's reserve currency. It's been around, for 100 years. But we've created all this debt. It just mountains of it. And the Federal Reserve, as you are well aware, is creating a lot more. I don't know if you saw the interview with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell on 60 Minutes over the weekend, but he is essentially encouraging Congress to spend more, to create more debt. And this will only drive the metal prices higher, because at a certain point, people are going to lose confidence in the dollar. There's no way this debt will ever be repaid. And like all fiat currencies, they ultimately go the way of the dinosaur.
Yeah, so you did a real service. The book is Rigged, Exposing the Largest Financial Fraud in History. The author, Stuart Englert. You find it over on Amazon. And Stuart, we wish you the best of luck on the book. We're going to obtain a copy and write a review for you. And we're going to sit back and wait for the inevitable to happen.
Thank you very much. It's gained an international audience. I've been pleasantly surprised with the interest in the book. About 1/5 of the sales have been overseas.
Really?
I've had copies sold in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, India, Japan, and Great Britain. And recently, foreign sales have actually exceeded U.S. sales.
Not surprised.
People around the world are interested in this story.
Hey, I know from the people who are out there listening, you people who are listening to Financial Survival Network, that a third of you are outside the U.S., sometimes as high as 40%, depending on the guest and the show. So that tells you a lot. It truly is an international world out there. Stuart, we wish you the best, and thank you so much for coming on. Any questions or comments for Stuart, myself, KL@KerryLutz.com. That's the email address. Twitter feed @KerryLutz. Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. And, of course, our main site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We will put a link so you can buy the book. Stuart, best of luck to you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks for the invitation. Good to talk with you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.